Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix. I've thought a lot about indifference. I think it's easy to be apathetic. The idea that nobody cares about you, or at least nobody outside of your immediate sphere of influence and of family and friends. And while I understand that indifference makes sense for the large world, it's a big, big world, it's a big, big universe, and people just don't have the time to stop and consider your feelings. They don't have the time to think about what's going on with you. But it's really difficult because I feel like I care a lot about those things. I care a lot about what's happening in my own life, and I'm sensitive, and so I care about what happens in other people's lives as a kind of compassion and empathy. And of course they argue that the problem with empathy is that feeling someone's emotions doesn't necessarily help you and doesn't help them. And I understand these arguments, but there's a sense in which indifference is tough, because indifference means that anything that you're feeling doesn't matter. The idea that being sensitive means that you're poorly wired. The way in which it's so easy for us to be blunt and indifferent and brutal and abrasive to those around us, and how not only is this normal, not only is this normal, but it's also the default. It's expected. It's just where the mind goes. And I've really struggled with it because I have a hard time living with that reality. I've often felt that there's not a lot that I can do about indifference because you can't stop the world. But on the other hand, I've hoped that I could make sense of it and understand it better. And I've realized that I don't. Even the word indifference is tough to me because it makes me feel like we just don't care. And I understand the logic of it, like I've said. It makes sense that it's easier to not care. It makes sense that it's easier to tune it all out. And I totally get that. And it might be that because of my sensitivity and my depressive mentality or my depression, a lot of that doesn't get filtered out. They call it cognitive disinhibition, where people like Van Gogh were super creative and where they weren't able to filter out all the extraneous information and stimulus. And this is definitely interesting for a lot of reasons, because I look at it from the perspective of the fact that maybe people that are more sensitive, it really is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, they're going to suffer more, and it's definitely going to hurt more, and they're not always going to make sense of it. But on the other hand, it might actually be a really good thing, because then you can connect to the universe, to whatever that means, in a way that you might not have normally expected, in a way that helps to capture beauty. This has been my obsession with art, is with realizing that with art, I'm able to tap into something beautiful, something that I wouldn't have expected. And so I do want to look at indifference as in a dialectical way, not looking at it as just being bad, but also seeing the benefit of it, or at least, at the very least, the reason for why it exists. And I admit that I struggle with it. I don't like indifference, and while I know that the world isn't based on my tastes alone, I nonetheless try to look at it from the perspective that it still matters what we feel and what we think. And that sensitivity, especially in our age of technology and futurism, is often defeated. It is often destroyed. And I know that I exaggerate. It's easy for me to forego the dialectic and just say it's all super destructive. But I don't find this to be helpful, because I know that my emotions are skewed. I know that they're distorted. They're distorted by a mind that doesn't fathom the world that it's in. It's distorted, and I have to accept that reality. Nonetheless, I admit that I struggle with indifference, and for a lot of reasons. I don't think indifference makes sense. It really goes against my understanding of the world and of what really matters. And I haven't been able to make sense of it as much as I wish that I could. And so I admit that I struggle with it. I wish that indifference didn't need to be so complicated. I wish that we were less indifferent. I wish that there was more compassion and compassion for other people. But it is the way that it is. And so in that way, that's part of the dialectical method, which is recognizing that indifference functions as literally a form of survival. Without indifference, we wouldn't be able to survive. We can't pay attention to every shade and every detail and every painting and every word, every color. If we were to do that, we would lose our minds. It'd just be too much. We need indifference because we can't understand the universe. And while in existentialism they might argue that the indifference comes from the universe itself, the indifference also comes from us, because we recognize that we're not going to be able to understand the world at all, as much as we wish that we could. And as much as we wish that we could understand what's going on around us, we realize the ways in which we don't. And so we have to put up our walls. We have to put up our defenses. We have to put up our barriers. And I think in that way I understand it probably better than I ever have before. And it's something that I turn over in my mind, studying like a strange specimen or like a beautiful diamond, turning it over, trying to figure it out, make peace with it, and accept it. Even if, as I said, it's the opposite of my modus operandi. It's the opposite of the way in which I view the world. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit dark. I tried to find a little bit more light, but you know, sometimes it's hard to find the light in the dark. But yeah, I'm Phoenix. Hit that like button, subscribe, share. I definitely appreciate it. I also encourage you to check out my books and check out my other videos. I'm Phoenix. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.